So, in this particular quick lesson, I want to talk to you about church governance. And this is like an introduction to church governance, which refers to the organizational structure and leaderships that guides the organization or the operation of a church and its ministries. And it can vary from denomination to denomination in the traditions. And the theology of each church and denomination can also influence the structure of how the church is governed. So I want to talk to you real quickly about three major church governance, and one of them actually has a sub governance or one that's coming out of it, if you would. So the first one is episcopal governance, and in episcopal governance, the church is organized in a hierarchy, with the bishops being at the top. Then you know it trickles down. If you're dealing with the Catholic Church, you're going to have the cardinals and all those archbishops all the way down. So the bishop in this particular organization has the authority to appoint elders, appoint deacons, ordain, consecrate, things of that, and they make all of the key decisions in organizations like this. And this model is common mostly among the Catholic and the Anglican, the Methodists. Those of you that are familiar with the Methodist churches, you're going to see that type of government. And one thing that I wanted to throw in here is that some churches that have the what you would call the episcopal governance, they also have what can be considered a heavy episcopacy, or sometimes it's called a high episcopal governance, and a heavy episcopacy or high episcopal governance often refers to a concentration, and it's really centralized around that episcopal governance. And in this model, the bishops hold significant authority, often without limits. And I mean it literally without limits. It's a lot of times their power goes unchecked, and this can lead to highly centralized system of church government with decisions frequently being made in a unilateral dimension with the bishops. And while this approach can enable swift decision makings and a clear hierarchical structure, it can also lead to potential challenges. And these may include a high risk of it's called autocratic, or which is like a dictatorship, where the leader's like a dictator. And it's going to cause limited participation from the congregation in making decisions. And there is the big potential for abuse in those situations. So this form of governance is less common than the traditional episcopal governance, but it can be found in some denominations where there is a strong emphasis on the clergy and its governance. It's so important that we understand these particular nuances of church governance and structure, including the variants like the high episcopal governance is critical for the efficient operation of a church. And they impact the decisions made on the church, the unity. It involves the involvement of the laity is impacted. And the ultimate goal remains is to serve the spiritual needs of the congregation and to glorify God. A lot of Pentecostal churches are moving into that high episcopacy or heavy episcopacy. The next church governance is what is called Presbyterian, where Presbyterian church. The Presbyterian governance is characterized by a system of elders that are elected by the congregation. And these elders together, they form the sessions and have the authority to make the decisions for the church. The Presbyterian Church and some Reformed churches use this particular model. The congregation, they choose the elders, they elect the elders, and by electing them, they give them the authority to make decisions on behalf of the church. The next governance is the congregational governance, and this in the congregational governance, the congregation itself holds the authority. Decisions are made through a democratic type voting by the members of the church. And this model is common in Baptist congregations and some non-denominational churches. So when you look at those, those three, you got to kind of look at the advantages and the disadvantages. And each form of governance has its advantage and disadvantages. The episcopal governance can provide clear hierarchy. In other words, you know who's in control, who's in authority, and it can be a source of unity. But it can also be seen as autocratic, that dictatorship, and that's a two-way street. The leader can literally be autocratic or a dictator, or it can be the perception of the people. Presbyterian government can provide balance and power, but decision making can be very slow. Very slow. When you've got a group of elders that you got to sit down and you trying to get them to agree on something, the decision process can be really slow. In the congregational governance, it can be, like I said, democratic and responses to the congregation's needs, but it can also lead to a lot of division and a lack of clear authority. Nobody knows who's in charge. This is why you have there's probably more church splits in churches that have the congregational type of governance. So the role of the laity is something that we got to look at. And in all forms of church governance, the laity play a critical role. They can serve as leaders, participating in the decision making and contributing to the spiritual and material well-being of the church. Their involvement can vary depending on the particular type of governance that we were talking about. So in conclusion, understanding church governance structure is essential for effective operation of a church. It affects the decision making of the church, the unity of the church, and it involves the laity. While the form of governance may vary, the goal has to be the same. The goal has to be the same: to serve the spiritual needs of the congregation and to glorify God. God bless.